Hi, this is Andy Teach, host of Andy's Awesome Adventures, and welcome to Venice, Italy.
When you visit St. Mark's Basilica, you experience several wow moments. The first wow moment is when you see the ornate exterior, which we will see in detail at the end of this video. The next wow moment is when you first enter the Basilica narthex or porch area and you see the beautiful mosaics. This is just a taste of what's about to come. When you enter the narthex, you will see beautiful biblical mosaics, many of them gold. Like the interior of the church, the mosaics represent stories from the Bible, allegorical figures, and events in the lives of Christ, the Virgin Mary, St. Mark, and other saints. The next and biggest wow moment is when you actually enter the church interior and you are face to face with 8 centuries of mosaics. It can be overwhelming to see the more than 85,000 square feet or 8,000 square meters of mosaics covering the walls, vaults, and cupolas, or enough mosaic to cover over 1.5 American football fields. The mosaics were done mostly in gold, which is why the basilica is called the Chiesa d'Oro, or Church of Gold. When the basilica was built, frescoes would have normally been painted, but due to the high humidity in Venice during the summer, frescoes would have suffered damage, so mosaics were installed instead. Those completed in the 12th century depict the New Testament, while those painted in the following century focus on the stories of the Old Testament. Also adorning the walls are the stories of the Virgin Mary, St. Peter, St. Clement, St. John the Evangelist, and of course, St. Mark. There are more than 500 columns and capitals in the basilica, and most are Byzantine, dating between the 6th and 11th centuries. Some classical 3rd century capitals are mixed in too. The Fourth Crusade in particular gave St. Mark's Basilica its richness. This was a crusade that ended in 1204 with the conquest of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. The result? A lot of treasure was shipped to Venice and installed in St. Mark's Basilica. St. Mark's 5 cupolas are covered with spectacular Byzantine mosaics, which date from the 11th to the 13th centuries. Each dome has 16 windows. Mosaics also decorate the apse, choir, and the multiple chapels. The mosaics in the north cupola depict scenes from the life of St. John the Evangelist. They date from the first half of the 12th century. The mosaics represent the awakening of the 2 men killed by the poisoned drink intended for the apostles, St. John in the pose of an orant, who is someone who is praying or pleading, and the awakening of Drusiana. The West Pentecost Dome features the 12 apostles, who are illuminated by the Holy Spirit, represented by a dove. The silver beams are symbolic of the teachings of Jesus through the Holy Spirit. In the Prophet's Dome, Jesus is surrounded by the prophets and the Virgin Mary, and there are images of the 4 evangelists and the pendentives. In the Ascension Dome, seated on a gold arc of light in front of a starry sky, Christ raises his right hand in benediction as 4 angels carry him. Around the central motif is the Virgin Mary, 2 flanking angels, and the 12 apostles who point upward. In the South Leonard cupola, there is a cross on the top and figures of Saints Leonard, Clement, Blasius, and Nicholas. The altar of the Madonna dei Mascoli features representations of the birth of Mary, the presentation in the temple, the Annunciation, the prophets David and Isaiah, the Virgin and Child, the Visitation, and statues of the saints Mark and Giovanni. Just within the left transept, under the dome of St. John, is the busiest chapel in St. Mark's, the Chapel of Madonna di Nicopea. The chapel was named after the 12th century icon of Our Lady, Bringer of Victory, which Byzantine emperors would carry into battle. Part of the hall from Constantinople in 1204, it has been worshipped ever since as the protectress of Venice. The image of the Virgin was closely associated with the imperial throne and the city of Constantinople itself. The icon is in its original Byzantine frame of gilded silver with gold enamel, pearls, and gemstones. The surface of the icon and the figure of Christ was badly damaged by the attachment of jewels and pearls to the icon by Venetian devotees of the icon. These were removed and the icon was restored. The face of the Virgin is very well preserved. The icon was meant to be seen from a great distance and in low light. Here, Christ, who is standing on Satan, goes into hell to save souls. Christ is grabbing the wrist of Adam with Eve right behind him, so they won't be in limbo. Here you will see a late 14th century marble structure in Gothic style, consisting of 8 columns and 15 statues. This type of partition, which separates the nave from the presbytery, has Byzantine origins and is known as the iconostasis, meaning the part that supports the icons. Common to Byzantine churches, the marble rod screen is made of polychrome marble and is topped with a large crucifix and statues of the apostles. However, there are no icons as tradition would have it, but rather just the statues. On the 2 sides of the cross of Christ, we find the Weeping Virgin, St. John, and the 12 apostles. Behind these statues is the high altar area, an area we didn't go into but wish we had. You can see the tomb holding the relics and parts of the body of St. Mark the Evangelist. For a small fee, you can also see the Polidoro. It is a panel depicting the life of Christ, made of gold decorated with precious gems, sitting on columns decorated with 11th century reliefs. It was completed in 1342. It's so easy just to look up the whole time you're in the Basilica to see the stunning mosaics, but don't forget to look down to see the intricate floor. Marble inlay covers about 20,000 square feet, or 2,100 square meters in rich earth tones, set in intricate geometrical and natural patterns. While most of the floor is geometric, it is lightened occasionally with animal and floral designs made with tiny pieces of marble or even glass. It is thought that the artists who created the floor, like those who did the mosaics above, came from Constantinople or Greece. The next wow moment you experience is when you visit the treasury and see the gold and silver relics. The treasury at Tesoro is full of the precious objects brought home by the Venetians from Constantinople in 1204 during the Crusades. With 283 pieces in gold, silver, and other precious materials, it is one of the most important and richest church treasuries in Europe, even after plundering by Napoleon and the sale of some of its gems to pay for restoration of the church in the early 1800s. Byzantine icons made of gold and silver, chalices, glassware, Islamic art, Venetian metalwork, enameled goldwork, and later, gifts from popes, European princes, and doges complete the collections. The next wow moment is when you exit the church interior and walk past more mosaics in another porch area as you leave the basilica. While we saw a lot of St. Mark's Basilica, we didn't see or do everything, so here are some additional things to see and do. Climb the steps and go to the outside terrace next to the Four Horses. See St. Mark's relics. Pay a small fee to see the Polidoro. Visit the baptistry. Visit St. Mark's Museum, which holds Persian carpets, fragments from mosaics, tapestries, and other church treasures. Most importantly, the original bronze horses of San Marco, which were obtained from Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade, are housed in the museum. Find out ahead of time what time the lights are on inside the basilica. Take a nighttime tour, which includes the crypt, which is usually closed to the public. And now, as promised, more detail on the ornate exterior of St. Mark's Basilica. The centerpiece of the piazza is St. Mark's Basilica. Commissioned in 1071 by Doge Domenico Contarini, this amazing church is built in Venetian Byzantine style, a mixture of Western and Eastern styles. Nicknamed the Chiesa d'Oro, or Church of Gold, because of its opulence, it has been the seat of the Patriarch of Venice, Archbishop of the Roman Catholic Archdiocese of Venice, since 1807. As I mentioned earlier, the original St. Mark's Church was situated inside the complex of the Doge's palace and was constructed in 828. It was built to house the relics of St. Mark the Evangelist, which were supposedly stolen by Venetian merchants from Alexandria, Egypt several years earlier. The church burned down in 976 during an uprising. It was rebuilt twice, the last time in 1063. At that time, the power of the Venetian Republic had risen dramatically, and the new basilica, consecrated in 1094, would come to symbolize the Republic's growing power and wealth. This basilica is the one we see today. It was the Doge's private chapel until 1807, when it became the city's cathedral. The Fourth Crusade in particular gave St. Mark's Basilica its riches. This was the crusade that ended in 1204 with the conquest of Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul. A lot of treasure was shipped to Venice and installed in St. Mark's Basilica during this time. The exterior of the basilica is quite ornate and has been added to over the centuries. Historians note that whenever Venetian vessels returned from the Orient, they brought something for the basilica, whether it be a frieze, column, or something else from an ancient building elsewhere in the world. Technically, the exterior is divided into 3 registers: lower, upper, and domes. The lower consists of 5 arched portals, the center one slightly larger, surrounded by marble columns. Above the portals are mosaics, representing stories from the Bible, allegorical figures, and events in the lives of Christ, the Virgin Mary, St. Mark, and other saints. Above the large central window is the winged lion, symbol of Venice. On the central balcony are statues of Greek horses installed in 1254. The Horses of St. Mark, also known as the Triumphal Quadriga, is a set of Roman bronze statues of 4 horses, originally part of a monument depicting a quadriga, a 4-horse carriage used for chariot racing. The horses were placed on the facade of St. Mark's Basilica after the sack of Constantinople. They remained there until looted by Napoleon in 1797, who brought them to Paris, but they were returned to Venice in 1815. The sculptures have been removed from the facade and placed in the interior of St. Mark's for conservation purposes. The ones on the facade are replicas. The statues at the top of the central portal depict St. Mark and the angels. I hope you enjoyed this tour of St. Mark's Basilica. Thanks for watching Andy's Awesome Adventures.